Welcome, and thank you for joining us in New Orleans, and thank you to Leonard for inviting us to put together this panel and to address you today on the topic of innovation and business development in obesity and cardiometabolic. I'm Steve Dickman. I'm CEO of CBT Advisors. We're, as Jay said, a business section writing focused consultancy in Cambridge, Massachusetts. We're communications and positioning for companies on the path to NASDAQ. And we've actually drafted over 200 S1 business sections. Over 100 of our clients have gone public, including BioAge, which is a good example of a new age obesity, longevity, health span, and cardiometabolic company. I wanted to ask Chris Stern to introduce himself, my co-moderator, and then we're going to turn to the panelists. We hope to deliver a stimulating session today, and especially one that has plenty of audience participation. I'm putting you on notice, Chris.
Thanks, Steve. Chris Stern, I'm a managing director and partner at L.E.K Consulting. Want to thank the SACS group and Leonard for inviting me here. It's a pleasure to be here. For those of you that don't know L.E.K, we're a strategy consulting firm that works across the economy. Our biggest practice is in the life sciences. I specialize in our biopharma practice, and we focus really on helping clients from venture-backed companies all the way through the largest biopharmas, really help navigating critical strategic decisions from portfolio planning, pipeline prioritization, first product launches, international expansion, et cetera. And a large part of the work that I do is in the cardiometabolic space. So couldn't be happier to be here.
Great. Unfortunately, one of our panelists couldn't make it. Lauren Kuja from RTW was delayed on her flight and couldn't get out last night. So it's just going to be the five of us, but we hope we can deliver sufficient thrills, chills, and entertainment. We're going to have the panelists introduce themselves and say a little bit about their roles in their respective firms. And we're really honored to have all of you here with us today. And why don't we start to my immediate left with David Kendall.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Steve and Chris. David Kendall, I'm Chief Medical Officer at Zealand Pharma, a Danish biotechnology company, about 27 years old, peptide discovery and development entity, and actively involved in a lot of partnering activities with multiple assets within our portfolio. Historically, have been with Little Amelin Pharmaceuticals, for those of you who have a memory of the first company to develop and launch GLP-1 and amylin-based agonist in 2005. I was a principal investigator and then ultimately an employee with Amylin. Worked with Ken and others at Eli Lilly for 7 years in the old diabetes business unit that has now changed names, and also served as the Chief Scientific and Medical Officer for this organization, the American Diabetes Association, for 3 years. So glad to be here. I'm at my 34th ADA scientific sessions in 35 years. So if you have any history questions, fire away. So
that's a great winning percentage. David Reisinger.
Oh, thanks very much. And thank you for inviting me to be here. Appreciate it, Steve, and nice to meet you, Chris. So I cover biopharmaceuticals and equity research at Leerink Partners. So my coverage spans as a sell-side research analyst, many of the large cap companies, including Lilly, Amgen, Pfizer, Regeneron, Vertex, et cetera, but also many emerging biotech companies, given my company, Leerink Partners, focus on the breadth of companies in the biopharmaceutical industry. I'm proud to say that our firm has been on a tear. We stepped above the likes of Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley in terms of capital raising for biotech companies last year. Those companies have tended to focus on technology in recent years, which is to our advantage as a healthcare-focused investment bank. And a lot of my focus is on obesity. We have over 10 biotech analysts at our firm that focus on various therapeutic areas, but given my coverage of Lilly in particular and other companies, I focus a lot on obesity. So it's great to be here, and thank you for including me.
Thank you so much, David. We're honored to have you. Melissa?
Hi, I'm Melissa Jones, and I'm the director for the Metabolic Disorders portfolio.
Can you speak a little closer to the microphone?
Yes,
Thank
sorry.
you so much.
I'm the director for the Metabolic Disorders portfolio at the Foundation for the National Institutes of Health, and also just recently moved in the position as director for the Biomarkers Consortium under the foundation as well. For those of you that are not familiar with the foundation, we are a private nonprofit that was mandated by Congress back in the 1990s. We support the mission of the NIH, however, we are fully autonomous. And our bread and butter is pretty much convening public-private partnerships, working alongside pharma, biotech, and patient advocacy organizations, as well as key academic opinion leaders to move the metabolic field forward.
Thank you so much. So we wanted to kick off with a question that I think is on everybody's minds as we enter ADA in 2026, that the GLP-1 boom that we're experiencing today may not last forever. And in fact, because there are limits on how long pharmaceutical companies can market their products, we know that there are patent cliffs coming and generic semaglutide coming as early as the early 2030s. And there are also obviously oral options emerging, and retatrutide, as we heard this morning, resetting the efficacy ceiling and really bringing us into what I think is going to be a new and much more widely prescribed era of GLP-1s. We still believe that there's room for a lot of change, especially because so many patients discontinue with these drugs, perhaps 80% of patients within a year, and the real-world weight loss is averaging currently 8 to 12%. So we wanted to ask our panelists to sort of look forward a little bit and tell us 5 years from now, so that's 2031 for those who are counting, what does the winning drug that year look like? Obviously, no bets will be placed. We're not on Kalshi, but we are interested in our panelists' thoughts about the future of this market after the first wave of GLP-1s crests. Who would like to start?
I'm happy to take it, having been around this space for a little while. I think Ken alluded to this, and you'll hear it from other panelists. Today, we are hitting this nail with a single hammer. All of the therapies available are GLP-1 based therapies, and it is almost unheard of in the metabolic space that we come at it with a single entity or a single mechanism of action. I mean, this was true of the type 2 diabetes space with insulin in the 1980s, save sulfonylurea therapy, which also basically augmented insulin. We've seen in the last 25 years an evolution to multiple classes, 7, 8, 9 different classes. So I think absolutely true that GLP-1 obviously was first and foremost. Remember, they were around for almost 20 years before both semaglutide and tirzepatide really broke the dam. So alternative and complementary mechanisms of action, whether it's adding GIP to incretin-based therapy to incretins or leveraging other pathways. Back to your point, and I think one that Ken made, we're just scratching the surface. 90+% of people are untreated. 80% of people who discontinue GLP-1 based therapies and actually choose nothing as their alternative. Today we have an option of nothing outside of the GLP-1 class. So I think, to me, that sets the template, not to besmirch, and we've been active in the GLP-1 incretin space ourselves, but we need to be creative, like in other metabolic diseases. I'm old enough to remember when resins were the solution to hyperlipidemia, elevated LDL cholesterol, then statins, PCSK9 inhibitors, now gene therapies, and siRNAs. So I think that sort of evolution in metabolic disease is what I foresee in this space.
So it's not one blockbuster that's going to supersede or take over the market from the GLP-1.
I think the lesson from other metabolic diseases is no.
Okay, great. David, anything left to add after that magisterial summary?
Well, look, you said 5 years, so I think the answer is pretty easy, actually.
Okay.
So I think it will still be tirzepatide that is the dominant player in 5 years, just given its success to date. But, there are lots of other products coming, and it's going to be very interesting to see how they, bifurcate the market to some degree and try to edge in different ways. we're also looking forward to watching the amylin space play out, and that in combination with tirzepatide and with other players as well. So, from a novel mechanism standpoint, I think it's pretty clear to everyone in the audience, amylin is going to continue to garner a lot of attention. And I'm interested in watching that news flow play out.
Super fun. I've got a bonus question. This was not on the sheet, but I'm interested in your opinion. Average price paid in the U.S. monthly for tirzepatide in 2031?
Well, actually, Dave Ricks has already told us. So he had said late last year when discussing the price for Medicare being $245 on average, that he would expect U.S. pricing to trend down towards that level over time. So he was talking about, obviously, non-Medicare pricing. So he did predict that. And, obviously there are going to be a lot more competitors that enter the market over time. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But I think, no company's interested in a race to the bottom, right? And, I think it'd probably be tough to compete with Lilly on price. So hopefully that's where we trend to. I guess there could be some risk to the downside with greater market crowding. But at least that's a good starting point, given what Dave Ricks had predicted.
So 100?
I don't think we're going that low. I mean, we shall see, right? Like, obviously, it depends on the product, right? So maybe the semaglutide pricing, since it doesn't offer the benefit tolerability ratio of tirzepatide, is below, that 245 level. It's certainly possible for single mechanism, incretin to go lower. But I don't know that we're going to quite go there. But it's the issue is that it's a little bit difficult to predict since, it's a two-player market today. It's a duopoly. I guess maybe another way to answer it is Dave Ricks is predicting 245 over time with a two-player market. So maybe we are going down below 200, but I just don't know how low it'll go. It'll depend on how many products launch and, to what degree they offer differentiation in their future phase 3 trial results.
I just needed the range to put it up on Kalshi. Melissa, do you have thoughts about what this future is going to hold for us?
So I'm coming at it from a little bit of a different angle. Typically, what we see in our biomarkers consortium portfolio is a leading indicator of direction that companies are trying to go in. What I'm seeing a lot of is looking at biomarkers for body composition, looking at biomarkers for end organ health. And so I think you're going to see new drugs come out that address a very wide range of the cardiometabolic health. There are obese and overweight patients that do not have type 2 diabetes or any other comorbidities. There are patients that have obesity and one comorbidity. And I think we are going to move toward a precision medicine approach. I don't think we'll be there in 5 years, but I definitely see it moving in that direction.
Thank you, Melissa. And we're sort of giving a little bit of a foretaste of what's coming later with Andres' talk about precision medicine, personalized medicine in this space. Turn it over to Chris for the next question.
Yeah, maybe I'll go back to you, Melissa, on this one. You said beyond 5 years, and that's what I want to pull on a little bit. The fireside chat talked a little bit about the innovation that we've already seen in terms of routes of administration. We now have 2 oral options on the market. In terms of thinking about induction and maintenance therapy, everyone's probably familiar with the evolution of GLP-1, and we've now got triples and amylins that are either on the market or coming quickly. As we think about mechanisms of action beyond that, beyond the amylins, beyond the glucagons, what do you see as generating the most interest in the markets beyond the 2031 timeframe?
That's a tough question for me. I don't think I could speak to a specific mechanism of action. I can speak, like I said, to biomarkers that we're seeing that are really of very high interest to our partners. And they're looking at biomarkers for organ health, for liver, for kidney, for heart. There is emerging interest in the addiction field. I've had several stakeholders reach out to me, and I will be having meetings very soon. They're ready to throw a lot of money in that particular area.
Thanks. Yeah, no, just a quick follow-up. Is it biomarkers of existing known pathways, or you're seeing a lot of interest in novel biomarkers?
Both. There are a lot of biotech companies that are looking at blood-based biomarkers, both proteomics, metabolomics. And we are doing a lot of analysis and validation in some of our other studies. We're incorporating them into larger studies where we're looking at body composition and markers for fatty liver disease. We're incorporating other biomarkers into that to see what else is going on there.
Thank you. David?
Yeah, I think agree completely. Thinking about the current environment and trying to see where the puck is going rather than where it is. Overweight and obesity is a disorder of adiposity, not a disorder of body mass. And I think we've come at this, again, with brute force, reduction in body mass, calorie restriction, reducing food-seeking behavior. That is incredibly effective. I mean, we didn't have this 5 years ago. But if it's fat or adipose tissue behaving badly, I think as retatrutide, survodutide, mazdutide do, targeting glucagon, which alters free fatty acid trafficking, helps your body basically liberate and use fat differently, not simply reduce calorie burden, and other mechanisms that are now targeting, I'll call it adipose behavior, to me are at least on the next threshold, FGF21, some of the interfering RNAs are now taking this approach. So I think we need to get beyond the overweight and obesity as a disorder of body mass, as really a disorder of metabolism, as Ken and Matt alluded to. Fat being, to me, one of the most intriguing next targets.
Yeah, and David Reisinger, maybe you can comment too on that, where you're seeing capital markets in strategic interest coincide with what David just talked about at the evolution of how we're targeting obesity. Are folks still focused, for instance, on which drug is going to produce the most weight loss, and that's driving valuations? Are you starting to see more appreciation for the fact that this is more complicated maybe than we have the tools today to go after?
Well, that's a great question. I think that, look, with such tremendous benefit risk profiles with, tirzepatide and semaglutide, right? There's ways to improve upon them, and you don't have to turn the world upside down and start all over. And novel mechanisms can carry a lot of risk, right? So I guess I would add the following, that we're seeing a lot of innovation from companies that are trying to improve upon what's available today. We'll hear from Jamie Coleman at Kylera on one of the next panels, for example. There are lots of companies that are trying to improve upon the profiles of, tirzepatide, for example. But going to your question of truly novel mechanisms, the issue has been in recent years that some just haven't turned out to be that safe. So we'll see more data from Regeneron's activin myostatin combo this weekend. I remember seeing some data a year or two ago and thinking, wow, does Regeneron understand that, if they're developing a drug, it needs to be for the masses? It cannot have eyebrow and eyelash loss. It cannot have oral ulcers, right? So unfortunately, some of the mechanisms focused on muscle have not proven to be safe. We're still waiting for more updates from Lilly on bimagrumab, but that drug safety profile appears to be somewhat questionable as well. Certainly there's a lot of enthusiasm for novel mechanisms, novel ways of improving body composition, and we'll just have to see how the pipelines play out. But to answer your question directly, the venture capital community has, I think, leaned in, and the invested community is focused more on leveraging the proven mechanisms where the ROI, considering the risk, is higher, and at the same time, there's definitely, with all of the focus on obesity, spending in the areas of evaluating more novel mechanisms, but we'll just have to see many of those play out.
I just want to offer a thought here. I mean, it seems to me, I would love your pushback on this, that we're in a time when the capabilities of the marketed drugs, GLP-1s, are pushing our understanding of what drugs can do. That it wasn't known that GLP-1s would have the kinds of impacts that we're starting to see in addiction, in oncology, and they're, in a way, defining the new spaces for the innovative front to move. And to me, it puts the venture capitalists, I'm a reformed venture capitalist, it puts the venture capitalists in a bit of a bind because they feel like GLP-1, it's over. They're not going to out-innovate Lilly and Novo. They may be able to sell them something that's a little better. I don't know if a venture capitalist is trying to hit a home run in that area. I think Kylera is a perfect example of a company that will hit a home run potentially, but it didn't do it necessarily by trying to outthink Lilly. And I just wonder, when they see what is being learned day to day, they have to scratch their heads and go, wait a second, how are we going to add value to this? If GLP-1s themselves are doing these things already, like, where is the white space for us to innovate?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's just a very high bar. There are definitely going to be opportunities. I mean, with a market this size, right, there's going to be a lot of investment, a lot of evaluation of novel mechanisms over time. But you're right, the bar seems to have been rising. And obviously, retatrutide just raised the efficacy bar. But there's only a certain percentage of the population that needs to lose 30% of their body weight. The reality is, I'm actually surprised that Lilly hasn't pursued approval simply for weight loss, not weight loss with comorbidities. So I have a friend who said his BMI was 29, but his doctor would not prescribe him tirzepatide because he didn't have comorbidities. So he said, I guess I have to wait until I have a comorbidity to be able to be eligible for, Zepbound. So I've been surprised that, obviously there's a dramatically greater number of Americans that want to lose between 8 and, let's call it 6 and 12% of their body weight. And I don't see any companies pursuing approval for those individuals. So I'm going at it a little bit differently, but I've been a little surprised that population has been ignored.
That's a great point, Chris.
Yeah, I'd like to pick up on that. I mean, coverage and market access in terms of what payers, commercial and Medicare, are willing to cover and not cover has been defining in this market. We're seeing hesitance for Medicare to cover for obesity. We're talking about BMIs where people are clearly in the overweight range, but you just brought up the point that unless they have a demonstrated comorbidity, they're unable to access the therapeutics. I think we've seen innovation in commercial models where Novo and Lilly are creating online portals for patients to access drug. We're seeing self-pay, where if the patient can get a prescription, they have the option of paying out of pocket. But I just wanted to put it to the panel. Generally, how does that landscape need to evolve in the future to increase the penetration from the 2% that was cited earlier to what we would really need to see to make huge impacts on population health. Are we on the right track, or do you see the need for big innovation that's still required on that piece?
Yeah, so I'm a licensed prescriber as well. Thinking about this and treating BMIs, the mean BMI in these clinical trials is now 38 to 40. When we did the first pramlintide for obesity study in 2006, the mean was about 30. So we're getting at this, after the problems and the comorbidities are piling up. And I say it's sort of like giving an antihypertensive after a stroke. I'm old enough, again, to remember when I had to get prior authorization for a statin unless somebody had their heart attack. Seems a bit backwards. And I think we're in that phase with overweight and obesity. It's, to your point, Dave, those who seek weight loss are seeking, somewhere between high single digits and mid double digits. The number of people who need 28.5% weight loss, who are willing to put up with 15-20% vomiting, that's a different approach. So waiting for MASH or waiting for serious untreated hypertension nephropathy is coming at this, sort of like we used to in diabetes, and we'll hear about this week. We used to not initiate therapy until A1Cs were over 9%. That seems just barbaric today. And I think obesity, overweight management is sort of there. How do we get to people earlier, create persistence? Again, if 70-80% of people stop it, what's the benefit? And why would I pay for it? Why would I go through the effort? I look at Ken staring at me here. He's got to get 8 new patients to grow by 1 because he's losing 7 of them. And that's a challenge. And it's not unique to Lilly or this space. Persistence in a lot of chronic diseases face that challenge. So things that drive persistence, treating this before the problems arise, to me is the future.
David, any comments about market access?
Oh, well, for those who didn't see the news, it was quite, concerning that Cigna dropped coverage for obesity for its own employees. I think that was announced on Wednesday. So, look, we're hoping for things to go the other direction. I would say that, hopefully with Medicare starting coverage for obesity July 1st, that will change the conversation. Medicare itself is intent on showing the benefits, that return on investment that it's making. So I think Lilly and Novo have partnered with Medicare to be able to deliver, that type of, hopefully ROI validation in coming years. In addition, we're very excited to see the SURMOUNT MMO trial results from Lilly in late 2027. Critically, that'll be the first outcomes trial that includes a primary prevention arm, right? So hopefully, these other developments will move things in the other direction. But if you know any Cigna board members, maybe you could help, move the conversation in the right direction.
Right. Thanks for that warm reminder. Chris?
Sure. This is the Obesity and Cardiometabolic Innovation Forum. A lot of the discussion so far has been on obesity, rightfully so. But of course, obesity interacts has been talked about a number of cardiometabolic diseases. The incretin class broadly has been very successful in clinical trials aimed at things like secondary risk reduction for ASCVD, in MASH, et cetera. I guess, Melissa, I'll start with you. What do you see as the role for these other, what I'll call obesity-related comorbidities in the metabolic spectrum in the market moving forward broadly?
I think we're going to see a much bigger role. I will tell you that a couple of years ago, I really wanted to get a biomarkers project in cardiovascular disease and kidney disease, and there were not enough funding partners. It had no legs. It has a lot of legs now. I'm seeing a tremendous interest in all of my stakeholders in the obesity space to develop biomarkers and risk algorithms for end-organ health. Like I mentioned earlier, risk algorithms or biomarkers for liver disease, kidney disease, cardiovascular disease. They want to apply these algorithms to their data from past and current studies to see what else is going on. There is tremendous interest also in the diabetes space in a preventative manner to look at possibly an FDA prediabetes label, and that is something that we currently do not have. So especially if you start thinking about prevention, under this particular administration with the MAHA movement, there is a little bit of shift of focus, and I'm starting to see that across my stakeholders. If we wanted to move into the prevention side, I think that now would be the time to do it. Will it last when the administration changes? I have no idea, but there is some good momentum right now and quite a bit of money to fund it.
David, Kendall, maybe you can talk a little bit about it from the operator perspective, how you think about the intersection of obesity, type 2 diabetes, and all the other cardiometabolic indications.
Yeah, and I think the term cardiometabolic health, which is what we're focused on, is proper. And again, I mean, these are interplays of disordered metabolism. Obesity, overweight is just one biomarker, if you will. About 10 to 20% of individuals with type 2 diabetes are not either overweight or obese, but they are metabolically overweight or obese. The same is true of the MASH space. We see individuals go to Southeast Asia.
Yes.
You see, incredible disorders of adipose again, but BMIs of 22, 23, but visceral adiposity, inflamed adipose tissue, all the biomarkers that make them look like somebody with a BMI of 35. I'm pleased in my 35 years in diabetes that we don't wait for A1Cs to become 9%. Folks get a little uneasy now with an A1C of 5.9, 6.1. That's a biomarker of things going badly. And I'll use what the survodutide program is doing with the so-called synchronized MASLD program, just doing biochemical markers of presumed hepatic disease. In my diabetes clinic, probably a third of people had elevated ALTs. That was the simple biomarker that I needed for fatty liver. Now, did I biopsy and ultrasound all of them? Never. I mean, you don't want a biopsy from me. I can guarantee it. I'm an endocrinologist, so keep instruments out of my hands. But those sorts of things, I think, will change, as I said before, the singular focus on either BMI or body weight. So do the math. Somebody who's 5'10", weighs 210 pounds, has a BMI of 30, 31. Losing 20 or 30 pounds for that individual will have huge metabolic benefits, almost regardless of what the biomarker is. And right now we're using simple clinical tools. I think they will become much more sophisticated with time. And hopefully we get the FDA past biopsy for MASLD as an example.
Great. It's really great. Before we move on, I just wanted to
add one more.
No, sorry, Melissa. I just wanted to prompt the audience that we're coming up on that moment when I turn to you for a question. So get your questions ready. Yes, Melissa.
I just want to add on what he was saying. Body composition is extremely important. I do currently in my portfolio have a body composition project to look beyond BMI. And we're really hoping to kind of move the needle with the FDA there, and the FDA is working with us on that project. I also know from personal communication with a couple of stakeholders that they are seeing differential effects across the patient populations that are enrolled in their studies, and they want to do a deeper dive on the body composition. This gets back to more that precision medicine approach, where you're identifying the right patients for the right therapy. And some patients, no matter what their BMI is, they have low visceral fat. And so they might not be the best candidate for some of these drugs. And a patient that's on a drug, how do you know that they're losing fat from the right compartment? These are really important questions that are difficult to answer right now.
David, anything to add? Maybe I'll put a slight twist on it, which is if you could comment on what you're seeing in terms of maybe how players in the space are making portfolio prioritization decisions. These are all high unmet need cardiometabolic indications. The trials required to prove outcomes are large, long, and expensive, and so there's some tricky decisions that need to be made. And we can't forget too that it's not all about incretins. Lilly and Novo also have sort of mechanisms, distinct mechanisms going after some of the same cardiometabolic indications, as do some of the emerging biopharmas as well. So what's your perspective on how companies are thinking about sort of attacking and prioritizing these conditions?
Well, when you ask the question, are you talking specifically about Lilly and Novo or new players as well?
Both. I think, yeah, take it from either direction.
Well, I guess what I would say is Ken's team has all the money in the world to spend, so they can invest much more aggressively than the competition, which is great for Lilly. With respect to other companies, obviously, they do have to be very thoughtful about their capital allocation and how they're spending on their income statements. But the short answer is the bar is being set by those leading companies. And, we've seen Amgen initiate several phase 3 trials. We've seen Pfizer announce several phase 3 trials for their less frequently dosed candidates. And so big companies that are in the game can also spend on important indication broadening opportunities. I think, smaller, more emerging players, have to be more laser focused on exactly, what they spend their capital on and, what they want to, have in their label. But certainly if their profiles are, let's say, better than the existing approved agents in some way, efficacy or the balance of efficacy and tolerability plus greater convenience, then, I think that clinicians will assign or in their minds assume that the benefits that have been demonstrated for a drug like tirzepatide would also apply to the next gen GLP-GIP candidate, for example.
Great. So I wanted to turn to the audience and see if anybody has a question. Oh, Matt, I knew I could count on you.
I just wanted to move to the deal-making side of this session. And thoughts on where we are with valuations these days, both, Kylera IPO'd earlier this year, but also maybe Melissa has a perspective on the early stage stuff.
Yeah, so the question is about valuations of companies that are either already public or the late stage venture-backed companies, and whether they're going to be $1 billion+ market caps for emerging companies in these sorts of mechanisms. Anyone?
Well, I'll start really quickly. Look, I think that there's still a lot of capital support for the industry despite increasing crowding, but there is that balance, right? That investors are seeing, the huge opportunity in this market, but they're also a little bit concerned about the increasing crowding, that will be playing out over the next 3 to 5 years with future drug launches. So I would say that at a high level, but where there's differentiation or the potential for differentiation, where there's quality and real proof that the investment community can count on, the money's there. I mean, we saw that with Kylera, right? Given the Hung-Rei foundational development, the leadership team at Kylera, they had a very successful IPO. So, if you match up the quality of the assets with the quality of the management team, that's what that's what Wall Street is interested in.
I'm going to answer the question too, Matt. I follow the space very, very closely. I work with a lot of venture-backed companies on that path. And I would say that there are no easy wins in this market. It's very different from the playbook that oncology investors have followed and neuro investors have followed in finding a rare condition that has biology that aligns with potentially large market indications, getting early data that's very promising in the rare condition, either IPOing or now it's fashionable to wait an IPO later, or so go to $1 billion in valuation as a private company and then think about IPO versus an M&A exit. In cardiometabolic and especially in obesity, because of the reasons we talked about, no easy wins, no clear path, there's no playbook. And I personally think that we're at a bit of a tipping point because of the likely big impact of AI on accelerating drug discovery and clinical development both. And I do believe that the entrenched players, the market leaders, Lilly, Novo, have a built-in advantage because of capital. They can buy more NVIDIA chips. So when I think about the daunting challenge of being a venture capitalist with a whiteboard, trying to think about how to outflank Lilly and Novo on something that requires, because every drug discovery development project will require heavy-duty AI application over the next 5 years, that is a daunting challenge indeed. So I'm not saying I'm pessimistic about the evolution of innovation outside of major pharmaceutical companies. I'm optimistic, but I'm saying that this particular space, I think that there's enormous applications of leverage that can be added because of the presence of the big pharmas in this space. Lilly announced a deal with NVIDIA in January, which I don't know how many people in the pure biopharma sector were really paying attention to, but I think that could have a transformative impact on their drug discovery and on their clinical development and patient selection, for example, and quickly evaluating results and course correcting. FDA is going to have to undergo a kind of a transformational moment in dealing with AI. I just think that the venture capitalists are a little bit on their back foot right now, and so the companies that get the good valuations are the ones that look like companies, Kylera, that have already been successful with other drugs. Anyone?
Yeah, I mean, if I can make a comment, sure. I mean, great question. I mean, I think Zealand is grossly undervalued. That's the simple answer to your question. But,
we all agree with you there, David. You're undervalued.
If you think back to the innovators in this space, Lilly and Novo, both were in the GLP-1 space in the late 1990s, really early 2000s. Now we're here 26 years later saying, well, what a great idea. But I will tell you, as part of that, I mean, getting 5% market share for exenatide and liraglutide was a brutal challenge back then. So there is enthusiasm, but the answer was insulin in the early 2000s. Now the answer, half of diabetes patients are on a GLP-1 based therapy, which is outstanding. So I think Pfizer abandoned its GLP-1 patents in the late 1990s. So I think we have to be careful, not just about venture capital and startups, but some of the good ideas don't seem so bright today. And I think keeping an open mind, and Ken, you and Matt talked about this, where are we not looking? What are people not keeping an eye on? Because it's easy, I joke that my mother has a GLP-1 GIP in development. She's 95 and is doing it in her garage. I'm not sure we need that, but some of the newer
Can I get her card?
Yes, absolutely. She's a pain in the ass. So
I'll introduce her to my mother.
I would add to the thing, this space, I think obesity in particular, and like arguably any other we've seen, is going to require, and we've seen to date, commercial model innovation that's maybe been unprecedented. We talk a lot about the term with our clients, patient-directed care in obesity, which is relative to any other disease class. This is one where patients know what they want. They want it now, and they don't want to put up with the traditional barriers that often come with getting medicine. And we're seeing that by online portals. We're seeing it with self-pay. We're seeing the success of the compounding pharmacies, if anything, has indicated how much patient appetite there is to get these drugs. And I think to fill out some of these valuations, it's going to be innovation on the clinical side as well as innovation on how do we get these medicines to patients as quickly and easily and inexpensively as possible.
Yes, in the back. Just if you'd like to wait one moment for the microphone. Oh, sorry. Oh, we have a question here and then in the back. Yes, please.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Really appreciated the discussion on both fronts, the weight loss, but also the cardio-kidney metabolic. And I just want to pull that conversation back to the cardio-kidney metabolic for a second. So let me just lay out for you a couple of observations. Some of them, please don't go, but I have heard from a well-positioned senior exec that incretins have basically solved for all cardio-kidney metabolic diseases, in particular heart failure. And that was a big moment within my team of cardiologists, they're going, wait a second, HFpEF, 5-year mortality, 80%, right? So I guess my question and the opportunity for all of us is, how do we help lean in a little bit more here into the future where we talk a little bit more about unmet medical need post-GLP-1, acknowledging that weight loss, reduction of visceral adiposity is a win. But if you look at MACE, I think there was a comment around SELECT. It's quote unquote only a reduction of 20%, right? So yes, 20% is better than 1%, but it still means there's 80% of the MACE related risks still there. HFpEF, no impact on mortality with standard of care. So how do we sort of lean in and think about the future precision medicine, maybe not in the oncology exactly one-to-one way, but really take the whole field forward versus the Olympics of Ozempic and just being happy with BMI reduction?
Great question. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'll quickly answer. I mean, I think your comment about what is residual risk, something we never talk about. Even statins have profound residual risk for recurrent coronary disease, stroke. I'm not going to try to get a label that says, well, you still have 80% residual risk with your asset. But your comment about HFpEF, I think, is well taken. That's true of liver disease. I mean, yes, we can reduce inflammation or ablate MASH, but if fibrosis continues or progresses, you still have profound residual risk. Folks with MASH actually die of heart disease. So, are we actually targeting both? So I would be a strong advocate, and I think we still need to talk about residual risk with these interventions. Again, we have PCSK9s because statins don't solve every problem.
I just want to go quickly because I did promise to the last question. We're coming up on time. In the back, would you like to ask your question? Hi.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Vish. I'm from Markets Bio. Can you hear me? Good. So, great session. Thank you. And we have talked about, we heard from the panel that there are multiple options that the patients would have in the next 5 years. We're talking about initial treatment, and then you're talking about maintenance. That's great. But for a company like a small startup like us, when we have identified a new target, but it's only applicable for maintenance, that raises a big challenge, which is how do you design the clinical trial?
Right.
And it's great it's great for the patients, but for a small company like us, do you have any advice or suggestions on how to approach a situation like this?
That's also a great question. Could you hear him? How do you design a trial for maintenance? You're a startup. You can raise in the order of 50, 100 million. You can't raise $1 billion. How do you do a maintenance trial? What do you do?
And then I have a follow-up question as well, which is GLP-1, which is a great molecule that has worked with a lot of patients. And the mandate that the agency has given everybody is you need to show 5% drop in body weight. And if it is for maintenance, then that might not be the 5% body weight, but it would be less than 5, but it gives you the opportunity to maintain the weight.
Right, endpoints. What's the endpoint?
Exactly. So it's a really challenging proposition for a company like us to say, should we or should we not? Should we pull the trigger or pull the plug for that particular target?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. Panelists, any thoughts before we wrap up?
I think that question is for David, since he's involved in drug development.
Your name's David too. I think you're absolutely right. If I have somebody who's BMI, and patients don't talk about their BMI, by the way, they talk about their goals, and that's not always a weight goal. It's, my pants fit better, I I feel better. But if you can achieve, and these are the Lilly data from the Maintain approach to weight management. Remember, this isn't weight loss, this is chronic weight management. And to your point, if I get a crowd of people who've lost through whatever means some proportion of their body weight and they're at goal, and it's their goal, can I keep them there for 6 months, 12 months, probably 24 to 36 months? I think open label extensions, which are expensive but can be done efficiently, will be part of what we have to look at. They won't get in labels, they won't be promotable, but I think they are critically important. Back to the recidivism rate, without drug therapies, we weren't having these conversations 5 years ago without both sema and tirzepatide showing these results. But now we have the opportunity to look at what maintenance means. And I would argue it's like watching your blood pressure stay within range. It's like watching your A1C remain within range, whatever that goal is. And weight management, unfortunately, doesn't have a great goal yet. It's very individualized. But to me, that's sort of where all the thinking, big, small, micro companies included, have to think about.
Thank you. I want to thank the panelists for a great discussion. Thank the audience for your attention.